Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. The title of the video is, Why Don't They Talk About Africa? And this is in reference to African immigrants, mostly on social media, that talk about Black Americans all the time. They love to talk about Black Americans. They love to repeat right wing talking points, pointing out everything that they see wrong with Black Americans, comparing themselves to Black Americans, which we don't understand because we're not going to compare an immigrant to the United States, to us who have been here from the foundation of this country and we know what it's all about. You're not going to get away with comparing yourselves to us. You're going to get compared to your homeland. And so we want you to talk about what you think is making you so great. When I listen to Tariq Nasheed, I listen to Tariq Radio, and they'll call in to him bragging about how successful they are. And he'll say, well, what is your success? And they'll start talking about jobs and working and being successful in jobs. And then he'll say, well, why aren't you successful in your homeland? And then he starts telling them about the poverty in their homeland, about the culture of open defecation in their homelands, talk about the food shortage in their homeland. He'll talk about the lack of infrastructure in their homelands. If they're so smart and they're so successful, why can't they help build up their homelands? And then he'll talk about the scamming culture. And then he'll talk about how they're working 3 and 4 jobs, working at a hotel, driving Uber, and telling lies on the internet, trying to shake these old white women down for money. He never talks about that, but he could throw that in if he wanted to, because they have a bad culture of that, to the point that in my bank, and they have a high security system, they won't even accept anything coming out of Nigeria. Tariq Nasheed talks about these things, and he's speaking from documented facts. But they don't want to talk about that. No, we don't want to talk about that because I was born and raised in America. Yeah, but you were born and raised in a country that you didn't build. You walked away from what's yours to come to somebody else's country to be successful, and you don't even have sense enough to be grateful to the people who made that success possible. And he cannot get them to see. You're not in a position to be trying to brag or compare yourself to anybody because this is not your homeland. You walked away from the place where you should be successful to come to a place where you had to depend on somebody else to create the infrastructure for you to be successful. They never get that. Then they get mad and start talking about you hate Africa and they get emotional and but he's making a point. He's making a point. They don't even want to tell him what country they came from. If he asks them, where are you from? Now when they ask us where we're from, we will need to tell them somewhere in Africa. But when Tariq Nasheed asks them where they came from, they want to say America. If he presses the issue, in many cases he has to press the issue. Where are you from? Then they want to name a state or a city in the United States. And then he'll say, where are your people from? They get insulted. They don't want to have to say they're from Africa. They don't want to talk about Africa. They won't even talk to us about how we could network about the real problems in Africa, how we could network together here in the United States to help Africa, which many Black American organizations do anyway. They don't do a damn thing to help us, and we were the ones enslaved. And all they want to do is brag. They don't want to compare themselves to the people in their homeland. They want to compare themselves to the Black people in America. But that's a false comparison because you had to come over here and take advantage of the things we worked for to be successful. And the reality is they are not more successful than Black Americans. They are comparing maybe a few people with millions, tens of millions. So it's really not even a fair comparison. But that's what they want to talk about all the time. And it's annoying. And I have spoken about this on my channel. All of these African content creators who they just troll social media troll the media, troll wherever they can to find out what's going on with Black Americans. Their whole content channel is about Black Americans, yet it's still, we're supposed to think that they're so successful. How? When you are basically preying on another group of people for content. So I'm saying if Africa's so great, why don't you tell us about that? Tell us what makes Africa great aside from America. Tell us what makes your culture great since it wasn't formed in America. Tell us what's great about you without talking about us. In the same way that black people will say to black men, tell us what you like about white women without mentioning black women. Tell us what's so great about you as an African immigrant refugee runner that doesn't have anything to do with Black Americans. That's what we want to know. That's what I want to know. So I came across this video on TikTok right out of the mouth of Babes. And she said, and I thought, okay, this is something that needs to be talked about. Some people say, well, just don't talk about it, just leave it alone. No, no, that's what my generation did. We ignored all of this negative energy coming our way. And what happens is that it just gets worse. So I don't think you ignore it. I think you confront it head on, and you confront these people head on. And you do what a lot of these Black American content creators are doing. Put up or shut up. What makes you great that doesn't have anything to do with America and especially Black Americans? Tell us about you. And they can't do it. So listen to this young lady because this lets you know that this is a problem for many Black Americans.
So I used to watch this African YouTuber who makes commentary content or whatever, right? And I just realized, like, within her content, she never talks about, like, African people or African problems. And I'm not saying that just because she's not American, she can't talk about American problems. But what I came to realize within these videos, she's constantly putting down American people and just kind of shouting out that she's from Africa in the midst of that, right? So I kind of took note of that like a second ago, but I never really said anything. But I decided to make a comment like, why don't you ever like address the scammers or like the foolery that goes on in Africa instead of just always coming for like American people in such a hard way? So I asked a question and basically people commented. One person said that I was racist. Other people was like, what country does she have citizenship? This, that, and the third. But it's like, yeah, she has citizenship, but she's always talking about how she's from Africa and she's proud to. All I have to say is from here on out, I will not be referring to myself as an African American. I'm a Black American. And I mean, opinions are like buttholes. Everybody's going to have one. I personally don't feel like that makes me racist because I feel like she should talk about BS in Africa too. Like,
now we see this is a problem going from an elder to a gen, whatever the latest letter is. That's a problem for her. She recognized that, and it sounds like she was giving the content creator a chance. Probably like the content creator, but they do that all the time. They want to spend all their time talking about how great they are and trashing Black Americans. So it's okay for Black Americans to say, why don't you talk about your homeland? Since your culture is so great, why don't you talk about that and stop making content about Black Americans? Now, we know why they're doing it because they're trying to make money off of us, just like they're coming over here, making a living off of us, getting an education off of us. And when I say off of us, I'm talking about the struggle and the sacrifice. Without that sacrifice, they wouldn't be here. There is nowhere they can go in the world, even in other African countries, that they can have the life they have here. And they didn't contribute anything to it. And it's so sad that they can't see that. They can't go anywhere outside of Africa and be treated like a human being unless they claim to be a Black American, which they are not. And they also refused to acknowledge that before 1965, they couldn't even come into this country without a white sponsor. Only the Ethiopians were able to come here as Africans without a sponsor. They were trying to make the Ethiopians white because Ethiopians come from a great ancient civilization and they don't want anything great coming out of Africa to identify as black. So they were trying to make the Ethiopians white until the Ethiopians got over here and they saw what they looked like. Ethiopians don't look like modern Egyptians. They might look like ancient Egyptians, but they don't look like modern Egyptians. So America had to accept the fact that Ethiopians are not white. But I still hold the opinion that Ethiopians are good immigrants to the United States because they don't make a habit of keeping up mess. And that's a good thing. So, to wrap this video up, if you're from Africa, you have a great culture, you're very successful, talk about Africa and get your teeth out of our backs because it's very disrespectful. All right, let me know what you think about this video. Thank you for listening. Give me a thumbs up and have a good day.